Hello, just caught me reading the paper. Wonderful publication, St. Cleve Chronicle. It is, of course, the Jethro Tull album, Thick as a Brick. And this year, it celebrates its 50th anniversary. It came out originally in March 1972. Now, a lot of people thought that the previous album, Aquilon, was a concept album. It wasn't. There was a few songs that had a kind of theme running through them, but this was an actual concept album. Now, it was a difficult one in the sense that it was just two pieces of music, one each side. And it's something that subsequently a lot of bands later in 72, 73, 74, if you were in the progressive vein, you wanted to extend your music to cover one side of an album. Jethro Tull did it with two. Yes went on to do it with all sides of a double album. So that's 4 single songs across a double album. Genesis, of course, did it, but Jethro Tull were the ones. Thick as a Brick, part 1 on one side, and Thick as a Brick, part 2 on the other side. The music is phenomenal. This was a hit album all over the world. It was number 1 in lots of different countries, top 5 in the UK, top 30 in America, sold a ridiculous amount of copies over there, and still regarded as one of the band's best albums. Now, in those days, record sleeves were a big selling point. Now, this is basically mocked up to be a newspaper, as you can see here, and it's really, really good. There's all sorts in here. There's a review of this album, which was written by Ian Anderson with a suitably pompous pseudonym. Most of the stories in here were done by Ian Anderson and John Evan and Jeffrey Hammond, the band's bass player. John Evan, of course, the keyboard player. Roy Eldridge designed it, but there was a hell of a lot of commotion at Chrysalis Records because they said that this cover would be too expensive to produce. Well, they did it in a limited edition. You may remember that eventually it came out just like that, which was just a single sleeve, which is pretty boring, I have to say. So it's nice to celebrate the 50th anniversary with the full newspaper effect. The big problem when I got it was the cardboard was a kind of textured cardboard, and to make it look like cloth, I suppose, but it was a textured cover. And of course, where this bent here, that was the weak spot. And particularly if you put it on the shelf with all your other albums, that would sort of wear out. So what you'd do, if you had any sense, you'd put it like that inside one of those PVC album sleeves, which you're advised to do now if you get this. And then they listen to the music. But it's great. It really is great. Everything in here has been faked, basically, by the band and Ian Anderson. It's basically a concept about a child genius, Gerald Bostock. Of course, many years later, Ian Anderson recorded Thick as a Brick 2 to see how Gerald was doing as a 40-plus-year-old man. And if you listen to that album, not as well as he was doing when he was just 8 years old, when this album came out. There he is there, receiving an award with his friend, Julia. Now, the big scandal was, apparently, Gerald got his girlfriend, or his friend, Julia, into trouble. Quite controversial, really, considering he was 8 and she was meant to be only 14. I think Julia there looks slightly older than 14, don't you think? A lot of the pictures in here are the band's management, the road crew, etc. They've got a classified ads section, which is really funny. One of the stories is a woman looking for 4 stuffed emperor penguins, and it's imperative that they are in good condition. But she is willing to pay £200 for the correct items if you can find 4 stuffed emperor penguins. £200 was a lot of money in 1972. It's probably the equivalent of a few grand these days. But it's a wonderful album. Musically, I have absolutely no problem with this album. It's a wonderful record. Through the years, Jethro Tull played shortened versions. There was like an abridged version of part 1. I would love to see him go out and do the whole of this again. I might be asking too much of Ian Anderson and the band currently to do it. But hey, you never know, because they're still touring. And they're going to be touring, I think, internationally again from next year. And they'll probably tour some dates in the UK as well. As I said, it looks like a newspaper. It feels like a newspaper. It's just great. Look at that. Isn't that wonderful? It's available now on vinyl. The vinyl, of course, is wonderful. sounds just, well, like it did in 1972 for me, but obviously it's very good and a really good system. It sounds wonderful. It is coming out in October as a CD and DVD set. So, I mean, this is very much a collector's item. Of course, if you have a record deck, you can play it on there, and it would sound wonderful if you've got a decent system. I do love vinyl. I've been getting into vinyl again more recently because the record companies have been issuing limited edition vinyl runs of a lot of these albums, and quite rightly so. This is the one you should get. It's available in the shops now, and it'll cost you quite a bit more than it did in 1972, I admit, but it's well worth adding to the collection. It's got the full newspaper sort of effect with it. The album sounds wonderful, and it's just a lovely reminder of Jethro Tull when they really were at their very peak. Jethro Tull, thick as a brick, all courtesy of the St. Cleve Chronicle. What a wonderful edition this is.